Foundations have a very, very critical role to play in the realization of the SDGs. I think we've heard a lot about the Millennium Development Goals, the way they were designed in comparison to the SDGs and how they've been designed. And I'd like to say from the outset, I think because the process for designing and arriving at the current SDGs has been very inclusive, I think there's been a lot of engagement of the philanthropic sector in ways that wasn't the case in as far as SDGs were concerned. So there's very early knowledge about what is contained in those SDGs. There's very early awareness about those SDGs, not enough, but enough awareness. And therefore, philanthropic organizations are really looking at how they can engage, and they have already begun to think about how they might help countries contribute and arrive at and meet the goals that have been set by the SDGs. In very specific terms, one, I think, let me say that foundations, I see foundations from two perspectives. They're the implementing foundations, and then there are also the grant-making foundations. And both of them have a really important role. I come from a foundation that's really that's mostly an implementing foundation, but that works with own resources or resources that are generated by a commercial entity, because we're a corporate foundation. But we are very much looking and partnering with other like-minded foundations to marshal together and put together resources that really help to address the challenges, social challenges at scale. So from the perspective of the SDGs, I see several ways in which foundations can and will engage, and I think sit in a very privileged position in as far as accelerating the implementation of SDGs is concerned. Number one, foundations, of course, can be very targeted in the way that they engage with the SDGs. Oftentimes, we can target in ways that governments can't. We can reach people at the last mile. We can engage and pull together around issues in ways that government cannot. So I think there's a particular strength in targeting. And I think if we go and are very intentional about some of the gaps, some of the areas where governments might be unable to really reach some of the most vulnerable communities, I think as foundations we can really help. Number two, we have an ability to much more flexibly target and deploy resources. And oftentimes, although they are not large resources, when you compare to governments, sometimes the ability to target those resources and move them speedily can really have huge implications on the achievement of SDGs and goals. And in this case, I see that as something that the foundations can be much better at, in really looking at where there are gaps in funding, where those catalytic funds can really have scaled impact in unlocking the possibility of realizing some of the SDGs. Finally, I would say the foundations have an ability to be innovative and very creative in the way that they can deploy resources. And this is a huge strength that foundations have, and I think ought to apply in as far as helping the realization of SDGs is concerned. If you will, for example, as foundations, we are able to target a problem, quickly learn what works, what does not work, quickly adjust. And in a sense, because of that ability to learn quickly, it is very easy then to innovate around solutions that might be needed to really address a challenge. And I think if governments and other partners who are, of course, have made commitments towards realizing these targets, can really engage philanthropic foundations and organizations to really use that innovative capability, that quick learning, that quick ability to catalyze and in a sense experiment and then innovate around solutions, I think that would really help to amplify and to scale some of the solutions that are really needed to address some of the huge and insidious challenges that we're dealing with around the SDGs. And then finally, I would say that among foundations, the ability to monitor and collect data. We've just heard about data, collecting it, deploying it, using it again to learn, and using it to measure. I think there is again an agility that foundations and philanthropic organizations have, and the technical capabilities that they can deploy to help not just civil society organizations, not just in the way that they partner with commercial entities, but also with government. And because data is so important in telling us whether we are heading in the right direction, whether we are deploying the right tools, whether we are deploying the right technologies, whether we are targeting the right populations, and whether the desired outcomes are being realized, I think it's very important for foundations to work around those areas, but clearly to also connect very much with other players, because in the end, measuring, monitoring, adjusting, and learning in order to scale solutions and initiatives is going to be very important for philanthropic foundations to engage in. I think in Kenya, as a foundation that's working in Kenya, we have found that we've been able to plug gaps quite quickly in areas where government is designed and deploying programs, but isn't often able to reach as many of the beneficiaries as it can. Let me give you an example. The Equity Group Foundation is one of the areas, we program in 7 thematic areas. And for example, one of the areas we work in and finance is the area of education and leadership. And we've been targeting bright students from very poor families around the countries, in some of the most marginalized areas of the country. And whereas government has deployed and provided the resources for free primary education, we found a gap in that by the time kids transition into high school, I found that many of the very poor parents are unable to afford to transition the very bright kids into high school. And we were able to create a program quite quickly as a foundation and with other foundation partners like the MasterCard Foundation, with bilateral partners like USAID and KFW, to really understand, because very many kids were able to go into primary school because it was free, we also knew that some kids from the most disadvantaged families had found their way into the primary education. But we also began to see the challenges of giving this opportunity just for primary education, but not looking at how to close the gap for transition. And we're able to quickly look at that, quickly deploy and develop a scholarship, a comprehensive scholarship and leadership program for kids, those vulnerable bright kids. And we were able to scale also quickly. We moved from 166 students to 10,000 kids in a period of five years. So that targeting ability to see a problem and quickly find the resources and deploy around that problem and find solution, I think is one that we found has worked really well in Kenya. But we also found that it's really important to partner with government, because in the end, the context, the environment in which you work, an ability to have the freedom and flexibility to do some of those programs really is determined much by the way in which you engage government. So we have found as a foundation that understanding where we can plug a gap, but really making sure and reaching out to government to become a principal partner from the very beginning, and understanding it from the context of the vision of government is very important. So if you will, SDGs and Vision 2030 of Kenya are going to be integrated. So in anything we do, we're going to have to make sure that we are working to those goals, we are working to the vision that the country has set for itself, because it's a vision that is common, that is shared. We've also, because we are we've become a very open society in Kenya. A new constitution recently passed that allows a lot of freedoms and rights. And because of it, ability to innovate, willingness to innovate, and to take on and use different technologies to advance and to effect change among the poor around many of the areas that the SDGs are targeting, whether it's in energy, it's in financial inclusion. We're an institution that believes very much in financial inclusion as a means towards self-advancement and empowerment, capacity as a means of advancement and empowerment and knowledge, and really creating, if you will, equity, knowledge, access to knowledge. We believe in that very much, and the society and that the country has created really is enabling us to take those innovations, take the learnings, and deploy them quickly. So again, I would say the partnership between government becomes very important in how quickly you can innovate, you can learn, and adapt and apply those innovations to the community with a supportive government. So we've recently, the foundation, I work for a foundation of the bank that has recently
deployed an innovation in the country around mobile capability. They're using a mobile network, a mobile virtual network operator to provide access to banking, so as a channel for banking. Most people know mobile money, but this is banking using your mobile tools. It was very easy in Kenya because government allows for those kinds of innovations to be sought, to be deployed to the extent that they're going to help address some of the challenges. As foundation, we've then been able to take some of that innovation and provide knowledge, awareness, information, and content on a SIM card that is then easily accessed and provided for free to communities. And because of the heavy penetration of mobile, it's been very easy with a supportive government. So what am I saying? I think in Kenya, I would say, one, there is freedom to learn, there's freedom to innovate, there is freedom to look for the gaps and to work in close collaboration with government for philanthropic foundations to really deploy resources, technological capability, their technological knowledge, human resource capability to address these human challenges, and that the government itself oftentimes is a very strong partner in making sure that we can leverage on what they're already providing to really affect change.